So how did this Taki Taimani guy go under everybody's radar? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate you all so very much. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out every single day. If you're new here, hello and welcome to the 2024 Minnesota Vikings season. My name is Luke. I will be your Sherpa, your guide through the wilderness of Minnesota sports. Welcome in. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Whether it is an audio listening app, but any podcast listening app, just search out Locked On Vikings. You can also search it out on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today on the show, I want to talk about Taki Taimani's surge into the preseason. So here's the gig. I watched a whole bunch, rewatched every preseason snap he took for a Patreon video. That's going to be a film breakdown on a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today. That's going to be like a video version of it that shows you kind of what I mean, because it's hard to be visual on a podcast for YouTube people, most of the listeners are audio listeners. So it's like difficult to make it work for that. And plus I can't show tape here. So go to patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. You'll see that shortly, but like probably this weekend. But what's really great about it is the preseason gives us very clear looks, because the level of competition often, especially in the trenches and against zone running, where the difference between a good rep and a bad rep is often like, did you get to the spot you're supposed to get to? And if the answer to that is no, because it's a bad rep and it's a guy that got cut 2 weeks later, it gives you a really clean look at like the habits and the fundamentals with no resistance. It's almost like a rep on air, and you can kind of see the basics. It's a nice kind of clean control, but it also comes with the obvious caveat of this was preseason, right? So here's the bottom line. I'll skip right to the end. Taki Taimani played dominant football. I don't think that there's a way that you can look at that tape and not say that that was dominant football. Even a totally untrained eye that doesn't know what the footwork is supposed to be, doesn't know like anything about defensive line, like you can all look at it and tell. And most people did, like just watching on TV, you could tell, popped off the tape, right? Dominant play. Dominant play against preseason opponents, many of whom got cut, right? I mean, it was like one of his most frequent victims was Wyatt Davis. We know how good that guy is, right? So we don't need to say that this guy's an all-pro, right? And I don't think anybody is. But what it gives us is the opportunity to look at D-line fundamentals. I love this. I love doing a little bit of Friday fundamentals anyways. And we'll use Taki Taimani as a kind of example to learn on. But I guess the first question is, if this cat's so good, why wasn't he drafted? And I think the answer to that is twofold. One, you are a 5-year player. He played 3 years at Washington and then 2 years at Oregon. He started out as a guard and then moved to D-tackle, where he was not really ever the premier pass rusher at Oregon. Played a lot of nose, big guy in the middle, right? Not a pass rusher, older prospect, and then totally bombed the combine. That I think is enough of a package to get you undrafted, just based on the levers, the variables that these GMs plug into the formulas that make their draft board, whether it's literal math or more like conceptually, abstractly. Bad combine, older age, new to the position, and so therefore, assuming some rawness is all gonna get you to go undrafted. That all makes sense to me, even if like the tape is really encouraging. And I didn't bother to go back and look at Oregon tape or whatever to go answer a hindsight question, because we have real pro tape, right? Like we have preseason pro tape. That's always going to be more informative to me than college tape, because even in the preseason, you're still going up against a whole bunch of guys that were all conference. You'll never see that in just a random college game. So what he exhibits doesn't really match up with that profile, right? With the profile of like a bad athlete that's raw. Like, who's going to draft a bad athlete that's raw? But I think the combine has a fundamental issue in that it is only ever an approximation of football. It's measurable in a way that football will never be. An actual football game, you don't get to, put all of the Rain Man-esque math on the guy to know exactly what the angle is and exactly how many joules he's generating. But while the combine is objective and measurable, and you can do math with it, and you can do studies with it, and you can do, surveys, and you can do correlational data, and you can do all kinds of, regression analysis and all these crazy things, it's only ever going to be fed by a data set of approximations. And D-line, I think, makes that apparent because the best approximation we have for D-line is the jumps, the vertical and the broad jump, because those are explosion. And they use the same muscles where most of your power on the line comes from. So this is why the jumps are really important for O-line and D-line. Arif Hassan has done big studies on this. He's had work on this for forever about the combine and like which positions care about which drills and like what you, and he'll publish and republish basically every year on the combine. You'll always see it. And the jumps matter a lot to the line, which totally makes sense, right? What muscles do you jump with? Your quads and your glutes, your hips, right? Like that's where your power always comes from. And that's the same place where your power, your base comes from in the trenches. But the motion that you make to jump is a very dramatic squat and then explode upward, right? What makes you good in the trenches is going to use a lot more of the side muscles. You're going to have different angles, right? Not everything is going to be coming directly at you like you're squatting it in the weight room. And that's, I think, where functional athleticism diverges from measured athleticism. So if you want the reason that Taki Taimani didn't get drafted, it's because measured athleticism let him down. And there is a correlation to that. There's value in that data and all that stuff, but it will never quite be the same. Like looking at a jump score and saying, I bet this guy is explosive, is not a horrible bet. You're probably going to be right more often than you're wrong. But looking at a player and seeing how explosive they are, if you can put in the time to train your eye to understand what isn't explosive and what it is supposed to look like, which is kind of a lot of the goal of my content is to be able to learn it myself, but then also people can learn it alongside me. If you can pick that out, it's going to be direct, right? You can look at a guy and see if he's tall, or you can get a bunch of data about his shoe size and guess about if he's tall, but you're not going to have as direct of information, right? So I think that's kind of what happens here. And every once in a while, you get these exceptions that totally veer off the path of what we would expect from a player with that kind of profile. So how did he accomplish this? This is an accomplishment that is worth being very, very proud of if you're Taki Taimani. Not just generically making a team, but doing so when you were so far behind the eight ball. How did he do it? We got to turn to the tape. That'll be next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy is a perfect little shot of energy right when you need it. For example, 70% of us hit a wall right after lunch. So let a 5 Hour Energy power you through the post-lunch sleepy head time. Or if you've got a lot of cramming to do, if you are trying to stave off the afternoon red zone nap on a day where the Vikings like play Thursday night or whatever, so you're not watching them, or even before a workout, you can get that extra little energy so you can attack the workout the way that you want. Zero sugar, convenient, portable size. It is a perfect pick me up for getting whatever it is you need to get done. So stock up on money-saving multi-packs if you want to do that as well, and make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONFB, that's LOCKEDON FB, to receive 20% off of your order. The offer is only valid through September 30th on one order, can't be used with other promotions, and it's not good on subscription orders, but everything else is good to go. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Fantasy Football. If your draft is coming up, a lot of you are doing it this weekend probably. If your draft is coming up, go cram some Locked On Fantasy Football. Get that edge over your coworkers, loved ones, and smash their faces into the concrete like they so deserve. Let's move on and talk about Taki Taimani on the field. So how did he do it, right? The key word here I'm going to use is instinct. That is really hard to build in the amount of time he's been playing dedicated defensive line, which is pretty cool. And a testament, I think, to Oregon's coaching and probably Washington's coaching to some degree as well, that he's got really sound habits and muscle memory and instinct built. One of those instincts is to feel when a down block or a double is coming at you. It's like a peripheral vision thing, and teams will drill it. You can see, for example, like USC drills this. They'll have players go up on the blocking sled, lift up the blocking dummy, chop their feet. That's normal sled work. And a coach will come in with one of those shield pads and hit him in the side. And when they hit him in the side, the instinct you want to build is to, I like the phrase, spike the knee, or corkscrew. Brandon Thorne, who talks O-line and D-line all the time, calls it corkscrew. I learned about this before I learned a name for it, so I don't really care what you call it. But essentially, you turn your knee to the inside and you almost kind of get down on one knee. And you'll never move when you're on one knee, right? And it doesn't have to touch all the way to the ground. In fact, preferably it doesn't, because you got to get back up, and the lower you go, the further you have to go to get back up. So save those milliseconds where you can. But essentially they'll like throw the shield pad at you and you have to kind of get down, then get back up. And what that does is it prepares you for the classics that you're going to get in zone blocking. A zone combo block is going to be principally made by one lineman with another one giving you a little push, then going up to the lineman, especially in more spread out fronts, like odd fronts, like you would see in a 3-4, where you have somebody like Taimani at the zero tech. That means straight up on and down on the center, right in the middle. Well, if that's the case, and then let's say you have 2 4 techs, one on each tackle, and let's say just for oversimplicity, they're all head up. That means that the 2 guards are completely uncovered. So they're going to go directly up to their linebackers, but they're going to give you a little push first. You survive that push, and that's a strong punch, right? They're going to give you their whole weight for a second. If you survive that, they will go on to their linebacker, and you are now in a winnable one-on-one. You win that one-on-one, shed that block, and get into the backfield, you get a tackle. Taki Taimani did this like 6 times in the Cleveland game. Did it a few times in Philly, did it a few times against the Raiders. He stacked a lot of those plays against double teams. Splitting the double. Really important, but it comes down to instinct, to feeling that there's a guy coming at you from the side, and understanding the basic setups you're going to see a lot, and understanding if I get this kind of block from the center, he's going to be part of a double, and there's a guy coming, and I got to get my knee down. But just surviving that is only the first part of the play. If you don't do that part of the play, like, it's so interesting to watch these games because you're next to like Tyler Manoa. Tyler Manoa, I like, it's not like he played dreadfully, horribly, awfully bad football or anything like that, but he didn't have that same feel. And so when it was a double on him, that double would move him out the way. There'd be a big lane. And then the linebacker would have to come in and fill it or whatever. And sometimes the run doesn't go there for whatever reason. But those doubles, there was one time in the whole preseason where I saw that double really wash Taimani out. And he actually got off that block and almost made a TFL on it because some other stuff went wrong, and it turned it into this like broken play for Cleveland. And I think it was actually the quarterback. And so there was a lot of like dancing in the backfield. So he had time to kind of recover from it. But it's like, man, even when it doesn't work, it works. It was just your day, man. That instinct is great, but it's only the start of the play. You got to get off that block. You have to shed that block. There are a few different ways to shed that I like. There's a lot of different ways to shed a block. They're sort of adjacent to pass rush moves because it's kind of the same thing. You're just trying to get by a guy that doesn't want you to get by him. Taimani likes to swim shed. Perfectly valid. It's not a swim move that's like all the way up with your arm like a pass rush swim move is. For a run, so it's like subtle differences. When you're pass rush swim move, you want to club. You want to take your hand in a fist, basically, or even in just like a slap, hit the guy's shoulder and basically push him out of the way. And then you swim is just you getting the near side arm to him is just getting it over him, just to get that last part of your body past him. But really, you're clubbing to push him out of the way. That's really the strength of the move is that you're clubbing. When against the run, in a run shed, you're not really going to club and like do that whole thing because you need to be faster. And because linemen are going to be a little more aggressive at you, you can sort of use that against them in a quicker motion in a way that just would never work in the pass. And this is all just like physics and just the kinds of behaviors that you're going to get from a lineman. But let's say you've got your hands, you've got the guy by the collar. Your hands are inside. You've got good leverage. And you'll see this with Taimani a lot. He always wins the leverage battle. He is so good at keeping his spine angle pure, pads low if you prefer, and getting his hands into the shoulder pads of the opponent, lifting upward and getting that guy stood up. The key to all leverage is spine angle. If you just imagine, two sticks that are going to fight against each other, the one that's lower is going to push the one that's standing straight up. Low man wins, all the cliches, right? And he's so good at that. So once you have control of him and you've survived whatever double stuff you're going to have, it's time to convert. It's time to finish this guy off. And for him, you snatch him down. You basically pull him toward you to try to get them off balance or just pull them down toward the ground. You'll never get holding on this, by the way. And then you punch the apple off the shoulder. That's the way that I learned it, was punch the apple off the shoulder. So it's this very quick, like, down punch. And from there, if you had to get your hips askew because you were, dealing with a double or whatever, the next move is to get your hips squared up to the line of scrimmage, or to the ball carrier if he's close, and then, go make the tackle, right? There are so many reps of Taimani doing all of these steps in succession with beautiful rhythm. Everything is perfectly executed. He looks like a 10-year veteran. And yeah, the attacks that he is withstanding are from Wyatt Davis's and other cut players, rookies, undrafted rookies, whatever, right? He's an undrafted rookie too. But because those attacks are weak and don't influence it a lot, it allows him to really showcase those fundamentals. And those fundamentals will carry you so far, even in scenarios where the guy going up against you is a better athlete than you, which if he has to go in during a real game, he's probably going to encounter, Pro Bowl guards. Those fundamentals will carry you far. There's more to it that I am excited about and want to talk about with Taki Taimani. So we're going to keep going after this. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your car alive. Whether you need your car to get your family from point A to point B, to get to work and back, or to do more intense towing and hauling and more rugged stuff, whatever it is that your car does, or maybe it's just a style choice, cosmetics, you just want a new LED for that thing, or it needs a new part to stay afloat, you can find it all at eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, they will sift through their over 122 million parts to get a part that fits your ride, guaranteed every time or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. One of the other instinct things that really stuck out to me with Taki Taimani's film was when the down block would come at him, which is very similar to the double, right? Somebody's coming at you from the side, and you can only really tell from whatever peripheral vision you have out of your face mask. So you don't have a lot of visual information. You don't get to sit and read and react like a running back would, or much less a quarterback reading a coverage, right? Who's got time. You have to make these decisions basically instantaneously by reflex, and that's why the instinct is so is so impressive to me, right? Like me personally, I can academically learn this stuff all I want. I'll never be able to do it, both because I'm not built like a defensive lineman at all. But even if I were, because I haven't practiced it physically, and I don't have that muscle memory, I can understand all the theory I want. It's not going to help me do it. And so when you are learning a new position and you learn those ideas for the first time, getting to the point where you do it by muscle memory takes a lot of repetitive, tedious work. And that work is on display with those down blocks. Again, you're getting a guy who's trying to get you at an angle. The whole idea of a down block, this will happen on plays like power and counter, gap plays. The whole idea of a down block is, let's say the run is going to the left, I get to block the guy to my right. So if that guy wants to try to make the play, he has to run from my right to my left where I am in his way. So he's going to come right through me. And I don't have to, do none of the reaching stuff that you need with zone, right? No mobility necessary. The guy I'm blocking is going to come right up into my face for me. And I just have to win it. I just have to beat him. It's beautiful. And a lot of times, those D linemen are coached to try to keep everything squared up. Keep their hips squared to the line of scrimmage. They're going to be trying to come upfield. So you might get to block a guy from the side. You might get to push on his shoulder. Now it doesn't matter how many weights that guy lifted. You're going to win that rep, even if he's got 50 pounds on you, if you can get him on that angle. Lots of advantages to a down block. It's kind of the whole point of power and counter is to be able to get away with mostly down blocks on the line, and the puller has a really hard job. One guy has a hard job. Everybody else has easy jobs. That works out. That's why it's timeless. So when we're trying to prepare to play against that, you feel that down block. You essentially have to find a way without getting your hips and your shoulders aligned to the guy that's attacking you, right? Without being able to necessarily turn and, accept his attack. You have to essentially find a way to accept a whole bunch of power and impact coming from the side without giving up a whole bunch of ground and getting washed out of the play. So what you'll do frame by frame through a Taki Taimani rep. Here's what you can do. Even if you don't have NFL Plus, if you have NFL Plus, go find those plays. You can I think search out by player and search out, Taki Taimani tackles. You'll see a few of these. There are a couple of really good ones in the Raiders game, actually. But if you don't have that, go to Twitter and look at my good friend Matt Fries. He spells it like French fries. It's Fries Football, Fries Football on Twitter. Search his account for Taimani, or just go through the last few. He posts a ton of film clips. Also a great follow, great guy. Love you, Matt. And go find one of the Taimani reps and frame by frame through it if you can. And what you'll see when that down block is coming, you will see his other leg, like if it's coming from his right, it'll be his left leg or vice versa. His other leg kicks out a little bit. That's just the instinct. And what you're doing there is you're building another stable base. Again, this is like basic engineering, right? If you ever took an architecture class or if you've ever built a house of cards, you know what I'm talking about here, right? You're standing straight up, your leg suddenly becomes like the base of an A-frame and you become unmovable. Your cleat grips into the ground, and then all it is you can put all of your weight and all of your power into that one leg and essentially push off of it to thwart the down block. And if that down block doesn't get movement out of you, it can cause horrible problems for gap runs because they need to clear people out of the way for the puller. So if the puller has to run longer, okay, that's a big, giant lineman who's got to run for longer. That's going to slow your things down. Now, defensive backs and linebackers have probably another step that they can use, a step's worth of time. That could be everything. That could be the difference. But it also allows you possibly to penetrate into the backfield, right? If your hips are still square to the line of scrimmage and your opponent's hips have completely sold out to try to down block you and you beat that, you get to go into the backfield and there's not much they can do about it. Like imagine, visualize a guard getting beat in pass protection. Their hips and their shoulders completely turned to the sideline and they've opened the gate and a guy gets through them. Like you don't have a lot you can do from that. All you can do is try to watch them pass the quarterback, but we've already established you can't move this guy because I've got my legs set up in the right way and I've built my house. It's instinctual. It isn't a conscious decision that you're thinking about and then making. It is just happening out of muscle memory, which he developed in only a couple of years. Those fundamentals will carry him. And whether he plays or like he could very well be a healthy scratch all year long as they choose to go with Jalen Redmond, right? Like you're not putting him in over Harrison Phillips. You're not putting him in over Jonathan Bullard and Tillery and stuff. Maybe he'll get, 2 drives a game to spell those guys or something like that. But whatever it is, or maybe it's, in the future years, whatever it is, those fundamentals will carry him very, very, very far. And I think with the measured athleticism falling so short, showing roots in the ground against doubles is the way that Dane Brugler put it in his breakdown. In his pre-draft breakdown of Taki Taimani. Having the strength to blow back a smaller center when you get the leverage on him. Like the functional strength is there to the point where I just don't care about the relative athletic score anymore. He has very much disproven the idea that would give you. Even against preseason competition. And future. Right now, this guy's a rotational player at best until somebody gets hurt. But for the future, it's really exciting to think of the idea of this guy as maybe the ceiling tops out because of that measured athleticism stuff. But this could be a genuine rotational piece of your defense for a long time in the way that James Lynch was for the Zimmer defenses. That he's cooked after that ACL injury and his body has changed so many times. It's very clear that he's pretty much done and he got cut and that's over now. But, as that rotational kind of guy, or especially that'll keep you in the league and it'll keep you on the roster. And if you're on the roster and you're learning and then suddenly 3 years from now, you're a veteran. And even if you get cut, now you have experience and that becomes a draw. You'll carve your way into the league on those fundamentals. It's everything. It unlocks the opportunity to learn maybe a more set up pass rush repertoire. You don't really expect a lot of pass rush out of Taki Taimani. He's 330 pounds. He can push the pocket, but that's going to kind of be it. He did actually sniff out a screen really well and stuff. So there's still instincts and stuff there, but you're not going to get nasty rip moves and swim moves that are around the edge off of him, right? He's going to push the center back and that's what you want. And hopefully that helps your edges. But over time, you can learn something like that. And that's what gets me really excited. So I think where I'm coming at this is with a sort of hot take that Taki Taimani didn't just barely squeak onto the team, but that he actually might be kind of good. The room does not the starters are set, but this guy actually might be kind of good. And maybe that won't kick in for a year or two, which is fine, but there might be something really sick around the corner with this guy. I think it's okay to be kind of stoked. I'll talk to you tomorrow or on Monday. We'll talk on Monday. I got one Everyman series left. I'll get it in before we start doing crossovers and stuff. But then it's football week. We're here. We made it. Regular season. It's coming. See y'all for it. And as always, Skol.